Okay, welcome back to our show. Today, we're going to be talking about how to master copyright, and we have a great guest with us today. Her name is Miss Carrie. She has a JD MBA. She is a lawyer, podcaster, speaker, writer. She co-hosts a show called The Backpack Show. She also has another show called Punch Out with Katie and Carrie, and also another show, which is the Marketing Smarts podcast.
When you say it like that, it sounds bad.
So she's literally like all over the place, and she is a celebrity in my eyes, whether she wants to believe it or not. Miss Carrie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's fun to be here. Fun to do another show.
Right. You do so many shows.
I don't know.
How do you find the time to do personal stuff?
So one show, Marketing Smarts, I've done for years. It's a weekly interview series about marketing, right?
Yeah.
And all I talk about is marketing, and that's what the show's about. And every show, somebody will be like, "Hey, I used to do this cool thing. I went to clown college." I'm like, "Oh my God, I really want to talk about clown college, but I can't because the show's about marketing." And that's what it is. So I started Punch Out, which is all about hobbies. And I didn't really have to find the time to do it because we do it in seasons. So it was like squish it into, a couple weeks, record everything and release it like Netflix style. So that's how that goes. And then the backpack show I do with Chris Brogan is daily, like every weekday. And I love it. So to me, it's not squeezing out personal interests. I get to talk to founders and authors. I've talked to two different types of dominatrixes. I talked to a nun. I talked to all different kinds of people about success. And it's fascinating. So to me, that is what I love doing, is learning. And so I don't feel like the work I'm doing is squeezing out my personal interests, if that makes sense.
I think I love that. That's so awesome because I have a chance to kind of like literally interview all walks of life of people that's in different backgrounds in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So I've interviewed people from literally across the spectrum, and so far I love it.
So you get it.
Yeah, been a great experience.
Fun.
So describe that journey for us. As a showrunner, lawyer, podcaster, now writer, describe that journey from place to place to place to now.
Oh boy. So let's see. So I went to law school, graduated first in my class, and practiced for a while with a big firm, moved over to a small firm, and then eventually got into teaching, like college, which was really fun because teaching undergraduates, you never know what they're going to say. So I really like that, teaching business law to them, marketing law also. And then I got into teaching graduate school online, this program in Florida with Full Sail University. So I was teaching undergraduates and graduate students. And I transitioned from there into doing training, like for adults. So different types of marketing training. And it all just sort of made sense in retrospect. Like, I don't think I would have planned my career that way, but it just kind of worked out. So that's what I do now. As far as show running goes, I kept thinking, all people want is a couple basic pieces of information about law, and why don't people give it to them? Like, do I need a will? And it's like, well, here's what happens if you don't have one. So if you don't like any of that, like there's what you need to do. Go see someone. And they're like, no, we can't give that away. I mean, at the time it was like this very novel thing. Like, no, we're not doing that. That's dangerous. And so, but I wanted to try podcasting, and like the law people sure weren't interested. And even higher ed, when I got into teaching there, they weren't like into it yet either. So I did a pregnancy podcast because I thought if I really super hate it, I'll just stop doing it when I have the baby. So it's called Baby Time. And I didn't hate it. I actually liked it, even though it was kind of tricky to get a podcast, on iTunes at the time. Was like, you needed some chops to do it. But I liked it. And so ever since then, I've just gotten into doing like running shows, having shows, running shows. And then it seems like, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but during lockdown with COVID last year, it was like, boom, everybody had shows. Like every time I turn around, a new person had a live stream. And a couple of people said, oh, Carrie, I want you to come co-host the show with me. And I kept telling people, you don't need me, you just need StreamYard. Like StreamYard is this cool technology that we use to do the backpack show.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it super easy to run shows. I mean, you produce it and get your guests and all that stuff, but like running the show itself was really easy. And so anyway, I talked about how much I loved it, and people kept asking me to co-host, and I kept saying, no, just get StreamYard. So finally they just sponsored our show because I kept saying how great StreamYard is. So that's all a very long way of saying I like doing shows. I learn a lot doing them. And so now it's just sort of exploded into more shows.
All right. So now you are the show expert, but also a copyright expert. And a lot of people don't even know what copyright means. So what does copyright mean?
Well, anytime you create something, like write something, a piece of music, a story, a blog post, an article, a book, or even sculpt something, like if you create a sculpture, I suck at that stuff, so I wouldn't, but it's something that you've created and you own the rights to it. So you get to decide who can use it, who can't, what they can use it for, that all that stuff. That's what copyright is, the right to decide how people use your creative works. So they have to ask you first, and they probably have to pay you, right? That's the point. So that's what copyright is. And I think what happened with like the advent of the internet was that people were like, I found it, so I can use it. And that has a lot of, potentially thorny problems. Like we've seen in political campaigns when people will just grab songs and use them.
Mhm.
Well, the artist may or may not support that politician in their policies. So it feels very personal to them how their music is used. It's not just a question of money. It's sometimes a question of, your personal belief system. So there's a lot kind of entwined in copyright apart from strictly speaking, the legal aspects.
Yeah, that's so true. And so I mean, a lot of artists use copyright. I mean, it's like really part of who they are. What does copyright do for artists? How does it protect the artist itself?
Well, it gives you the exclusive right to reproduce the work, to make money from the work. So somebody else can't just take that painting behind you, which is, great, and start making copies of it and selling them on the street, because the person who took the time and had the talent to create that work is the only person who's able to do that. So it gives you the ability to make a living off of your art. I think it needs reform. I mean, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole right this second, but copyright terms used to be much shorter. And then after the copyright term ended, people could use your stuff freely to create other work. And that's how we got a lot of kind of derivative works built on top of others, like modified songs, like mashups and stuff would be possible if you had that same short term kind of copyright, like say 10 years. But it doesn't. It goes for 70 years plus the life of the creator or the author. And if it's corporate, like a work that's owned by a corporation or created as a work for hire for a business, that can go for 150 years. It's like a very long period.
Wow.
It ties things up for a very long time and creates unintentionally a whole category of stuff that we're just not sure if we can use it or not, because we can't find whoever did it and we don't know when exactly it was created. Those are called orphan works. And so there's like silent films and other kinds of really interesting and valuable works that nobody can do anything with because we don't know who owns them and how old they are. So it's kind of sad. That's a whole rabbit hole. So,
Wow, yeah, I didn't even
yeah.
know that. So what about the public domain, like these songs that we can sing that become public? How did that come about? And
Mm.
how's that different from copywriting? Like, like A Wonderful World. Like, what is it? What is it, the Christmas song that came on and it came up due and then it became a public domain and everybody just started using it because they could
Yeah.
sing it now.
Well, it's so interesting. So like Happy Birthday was kind of the same thing. Originally it was supposed to be Good Morning to You. This is the lore, that it was Good Morning to You. And then these teachers, turned it into Happy Birthday to You. And somehow I think it was Warner Chappell got the publishing rights to it and something, but it's all very sketchy. Like I'm not 100% sure that the sisters credited with the song in fact wrote it. And I'm definitely not sure that the publishing company could just be like, and it's ours now. There's like a whole lot of questions that I have that were never answered to my satisfaction. But so anyway, that's like under copyright, which means that the person who owns the rights, whether that's the creator or a publishing company that bought the rights later, or somebody to whom I gave the copyright, because you can do that. I mean, it's like any kind of property, you can transfer it around, but the person who owns the rights decides what happens with that work and what doesn't, and has the exclusive right to make money from it for that copyright period, which is pretty lengthy. Everything that's not under copyright, either because the copyright's expired or because the person don't kind of donated it or released it to the public domain immediately, those things you can use freely for anything you want. So that means for advertising, right? So like a song that's older than the copyright period is now in the public domain. You could use it for commercial purposes, even for anything you want. Like
Right.
someday you'd be able to use Ring of Fire for like hemorrhoid cream. I think they actually did already and paid money for that, but like they could do it without paying money for that when it's in the public domain.
Wow. Can one or more, two people own a copyright itself? Does it have to be one single individual or corporation?
No, actually, everybody who contributed to the work would be joint copyright holders. You see that a lot actually with
Oh,
people who
wow.
write songs together. So you'll have the people who do the instrumental part, the people who do the lyrics, they work together a lot of times just jamming to get it out. And so they're all joint copyright holders of that song. I
That's
think sometimes between them, they shift it around a little bit. Like they might be like, all right, well, Bob was there that day, but he didn't really say anything. And like we did it all. And so they'll agree. But yeah, more than one person can.
So how would one get permission to use something that's copywritten and owned by someone else? How do you get permission to use that particular, that work of art, if you will?
Always in writing, I would say that, because all they have to do is say, nuh-uh. If you say what they said, it was okay to use it. And they're like, nuh-uh, no, I didn't.
Yeah,
Then you're looking at a very expensive, potentially copyright claim.
oh,
So always in writing, but it doesn't have to be complicated. Like I have a friend who is a musician, and when I wanted to use his song as an opener for my podcast, I just emailed him and said, here's the piece I want to use, like 30 seconds of it to open this podcast here. Is that okay with you? And he was like, absolutely. It's totally fine. Just mention me. I said, great. So that's what I did. And that was enough. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. Depends what you're using it for, right? So if I was going to like use it in advertising, I imagine it would have been more complicated. Maybe there would have been a question of money and for how long the term goes. There was one case I worked on where a resort used somebody's song, a band owned a song, and they'd gotten the right to use it for one season. Like the resort has a season, that they're open in advertising. It's like tourist season. And then they used it again the next season. And that was not okay. They had not gotten permission for that. So they had to ultimately pay for that. So that's the question too, is like how long you give permission for, all that kind of stuff, all comes into play. But get it in writing from the correct person. And that's
right.
sometimes very hard to figure out if it's been kind of transferred around.
That is really true, because I mean, a piece of work that can be transferred around multiple times, like you said, it's transferable just like any piece of property is,
Yeah.
right? You need to, right, transfer it to
Oh,
someone.
yeah.
Sometimes get very diluted, like you said. We don't know who owns like silent music from like silent like movies from back in the day. No one knows.
No. And there's multiple too. So think about this. If I write a song and then you do the music for it and then we perform it, there's actually like 3 potentially people that you'd have to get permission from to use that recording. Like the person who did the recording owns the rights, you and me, all of us.
Oh my goodness, it's a
It's
very
complicated.
complicated piece of instrument, if you will, when it comes to the contract with copywriting. And so why? So how does okay? So what works? So what are the protections of copywriting for all the individuals individually, and who gets the piece of the pie? Who gets the bigger, larger piece of the
Oh
pie when it comes
boy.
to royalties?
Oh, it's so rough. So I think session musicians get pretty screwed. Like, I mean, they could probably confirm or deny for you, but my impression is they didn't used to get anything at all. Now I think that they do, but I think it's somewhat less. Publishers get a ton. Artists get some cut. It's you're right. It gets sliced up pretty fine.
Yeah.
I think when you're talking about other kinds of works, what's complicated for people in business is figuring out that there's a thing like copyright, which means you can't just use whatever Google image you found and slap it on your stuff.
Right.
But also trying to figure out whether something they've found that says it's public domain or that it's released in accordance with a Creative Commons license, which is another way to, like I was saying, to let other people use your work. You can give it what's called a Creative Commons license. There's different categories. It's like you can use it, but you have to credit me, or you can use it any way you want, including commercial, or you can use it for anything but commercial. Like there's all different types, so that the person who created the work can say what you can do with it. The problem is when you upload things to a website and say they're public domain, I mean, it doesn't mean like it's actually mine. I could have just found it and then put it there. You know what I'm saying? So it's very complicated. That's kind of the hard part. So there's a big pie. It should get sliced up among the people who own copyright. On the other hand, plenty of people jack content all the time, put it up on a site and say, go ahead and use it. They have no right to tell you to use it.
Mhm.
It'd be like me saying, sure, you can come and sleep in, Elizabeth Taylor's old house. Like it's not actually my house,
Right.
or like the White House. If I said you could spend the night in the White House, does that give you the right to sleep in the White House? No.
Right. So, but how will someone, start the process of copywriting their actual work? Well, like, what does that process looks like?
So you own copyright as soon as your work is fixed in a tangible medium. That's what it's called. But
Mhm.
that could be, sketching on a napkin. It could be when you write a blog post, like the kind of binary code that backs it up, that counts.
Mhm, yeah.
So as soon as you create it, you have rights in it. The problem is proving that you do. So it's pretty inexpensive actually to register copyright for your works. You can do it. You could slap them all together on like a big anthology, do it at once. If you have a big kind of beefy piece, I would do it once, like just that piece by itself. You register through the US Copyright Office. It's not expensive to do it. And that just puts people on notice. Like you already owned the copyright, but this puts other people on notice that you own the copyright. And therefore, if they come across your work, they'll know who to contact for permission. So if you use somebody else's work without permission and say, okay, well, this is copyrighted by Brandy Williams. Now you're just alerting Brandy Williams to the fact that he should come and sue you, is what you're
There you
doing.
go. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go find them. And that's that. So it's pretty easy, the process. If you have a lot of little creative works, it could add up. So,
But should
but it's
one
worth
should
it.
should somebody copyright all their work or just some of their work? Like, what should be copywritten?
Well, I would always claim copyright in it. Like I would mark everything on my website or any pieces that I publish, like copyright Carrie O'Shea Gorgon and the date. You can do that. You just can't say that it's registered copyright
Yeah.
until you've registered the copyright. So, I mean, you can let people know that it's yours, claim rights in it. For the smaller pieces, I would do that. For a big piece like a book, I mean, usually your publisher is going to help you out with that. But if you're self publishing, then definitely you want to go ahead and register that. Any substantial work that took a lot of time and effort.
Oh, so here's the rabbit hole that we probably talked about earlier. Has the Copyright Act, kept peace currently in the computer age that we're currently living in? Has technology changes, and it's literally just changing over time? Do you think the copyright, law that we currently have has literally kept up with the technology that we currently have?
No. But I also think that I think it's probably too restrictive in a lot of ways. Like there's things you should be able to do with older works that you can't. There's things like in documentaries where somebody's walking down a street and you hear a little snippet of music or something.
Mhm.
That used to be fine. It was like no big deal. Obviously, it's not undercutting the market for the work. If anything, it might make you go, oh, yeah, I like that song. I should go get that album. Now they come down on you for it. So people will purposely cut out any kind of incidental showing of copyright stuff from their works. And I think it's kind of a chilling effect. So it shrinks the public domain and what should be considered, an acceptable use of copyrighted material, and makes the life really difficult for creators in a lot of ways. So I think it should be less restrictive than it is, but let's leave that out of this, I guess. Yeah, just say that.
Oh, I
Um,
love the rabbit holes because it opened up a can of worms.
but
So
it is what it is. So until it changes, this is the landscape we're in, and this is what you have to deal with.
yeah.
So
I love it. Jerry, it's been awesome, awesome to have you. Definitely a breath of fresh air. And all your shows are amazing, by the way. I had a chance to look at
thank
a few of the
you.
episodes.
Thanks. Yeah, have a good time. If it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it. So
Absolutely. So tell my audience, how can they locate you? How can they find you? How can they get to know more about you?
on all the different social channels, I'm at Carrie Gorgone, KerryGorgone, or you can find my website at carrie.show.
There you have it. Miss Carrie on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, next IBS.